Welcome to this episode of FTD News in History, where we're documenting the Enfield Poltergeist. Right off the bat, I have to ask you guys, what's the scariest thing that has ever happened to you or has happened to somebody that you know? Stemming from the events beginning in the year 1977 to 1979 in Enfield, England, the Enfield Poltergeist, also known as the Enfield Haunting, has become one of the most documented paranormal cases and perhaps the most famous haunting ever in the history of Britain. Now, the newest adaptation of the Enfield Poltergeist is the movie The Conjuring 2. You've probably seen the previews of it, or if you're watching this after the movie came out, you probably saw the movie if you're into horror. The movie stars Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. It tells a tale of Peggy Hodgson and the haunting of her Enfield home that began on the evening of August 30th, 1977. It was on that night where her daughter, Janet, who was 11 at the time, told her mother that her brother's beds were wobbling. They had shared a room, and then in the next night, Peggy Hodgson, the mother, she heard loud noises coming from upstairs, so she entered her kids' rooms a little bit frustrated, thinking that they were acting up. Go to bed, kids. But that's where she saw the chest of drawers move all by itself. The following night after the first disturbance was August 31st, 1977. Janet and her brother Johnny, they heard something moving in the dark, and then they screamed out, called for their mother, and the mom came up again, a little bit frustrated again. When the mom came, checked on them, the sound stopped, but when she left, the sound came back. Again, furniture was moving around. Peggy thought that there could have been a burglar in the house. She called the neighbors over to see if they could find whoever was causing this noise, but they couldn't find anyone, but the noises continued. Maurice Grosse was called in. He's a member of the world's oldest paranormal research group, known as the Society for Psychical Research, or SPR for short. The organization was found in 1882. Now, when Maurice Grosse was investigating, he said that the knocking could have come from several places all at once, and in a quote, he stated this: "If you go and listen to it in the wall over there, it'll suddenly come from the wall over there." A series of knocks would often fade in and then slowly fade out again. Now, over the next several months of his investigation, Maurice Grosse saw couches floating, tables tipping over, chests of drawers spinning out of control. He saw stones flying right over the house and even coins just falling out of thin air right in front of his eyes. Now, on top of that, just imagine this guy would also hear dogs barking, and then when he would go to check a room, obviously there's no dogs in there. Barkings continued. On one particular day, Maurice and one of the neighbors, they heard Janet's sister, Rose, yelling, "I can't move, it's holding my leg." So they rushed over to the house, found Janet on top of a staircase with one leg stretched back behind her. So Maurice and a neighbor grabbed her hands to try to pull her away from the force, but she didn't budge. Whatever was holding her had a crazy grip on her. Now, besides the creepy noise in the house as well as furniture moving, Janet would also go into violent trances and repeatedly being thrown out of her bed in the night. The SPR investigators, they moved her out of the room just to see if anything was going to happen in the room. One of the nights, the SPR investigators decided to conduct an experiment. They removed Janet from her bedroom to see if anything was going to happen. But later on, the family heard a violent wrenching sound in one of the rooms upstairs that were completely empty. They found the fireplace completely pulled out of the wall. Now, I'm thinking that would be the last straw for me. When I see that, I'm packing my bags and I'm gone. But this family continued to stay. So you're hearing creepy noises, unseen forces are touching you, as well as your furniture is moving all over the place. Now, here's where it gets even more creepy. A spirit would also begin to speak through Janet. She would often speak in a very deep, rough male voice, which identified itself as Bill. She would speak like that for hours on end. So who was Bill? It's believed that the haunting was triggered by the death of Bill Wilkins, who was a former occupant of the house. Now, the voice once described Bill's death, and speaking in first person, the voice said this: "Just before I died, I went blind, and then I had a hemorrhage, and I fell asleep, and I died in the chair in the corner downstairs." Now, this voice can actually still be heard on audio tapes to this day. Now, there have been many claims that Janet was just acting up and just playing pranks on everybody, so they decided to do a test to find out what's really going on in this this Enfield house. One of the experiments, while she was supposedly possessed, they made her hold a good amount of water in her mouth, yet the deep male voice continued to come through. More voice tests were conducted by a professor from the Birkbeck College, which is now part of the University of London. He concluded that it was next to impossible for her to speak so long in that way because her vocal cords would have been damaged. So she couldn't have been making this up. The professor also claimed that Janet was not making this voice consciously. Now, despite the evidence that was presented, could it still be possible that this thing was a giant hoax? Two experts, also from the Society of Psychical Research, caught the children bending spoons by themselves. They also considered it strange that nobody else was allowed in the room while Janet was speaking in her possessed voice, as well as Janet herself admitted to them that several of the events were fabricated. In 1980, she told ITV News, "Oh yeah, once or twice we faked things just to see if Mr. Gross and Mr. Playfair would catch us." Now, in one article posted a year before the release date of the movie The Conjuring 2, Janet said that roughly 2% of the paranormal activity in their home had been faked. Now, this led many people to believe that if some of it was fake, perhaps everything was fake. The American magician Milbourne Christopher also investigated, and he said that he didn't find anything that was anywhere near paranormal. When he spoke about the poltergeist, he said, and I quote, "The poltergeist was nothing more than the antics of a little girl who wanted to cause trouble and who was very, very clever." As well as in 2015, the editor-in-chief of Skeptic magazine, Deborah Hyde, she commented and said that there was absolutely no solid evidence of the Enfield poltergeist. In the statement, she said, "The first thing to note is that the occurrences didn't happen under controlled circumstances. People frequently see what they expect to see, their senses being organized and shaped by their own prior experiences and beliefs." Now, even though she did admit that yes, some of the events were fake, the real Janet Hodgson says that the Enfield haunting was indeed very real, and that when the hauntings began to die down, she believes that it was due to a priest that visited the house in the fall of 1978. But from time to time, their mother Peggy would still hear noises in the house, said that you always felt like if you were being watched. Now, there was never really a happy ending to this story. Janet's other brother, Johnny, he died of cancer at the age of 14. As well as Janet, when she was 18 years old, she lost a baby due to COT. Now, COT is more commonly known as Sudden Infant Death Syndrome, or SIDS. It's a term used to describe the sudden death of a baby in its sleep where no cause or reason can be found. Now, after the real Peggy Hodgson, the mother, passed away, a woman by the name of Claire Bennett and her 4 sons moved into the house. And like Janet's brother Billy, Claire said that yes, you indeed felt as if someone was watching you. Now, during the night, her sons would have been woken up by noises and voices coming from downstairs. And that's when she learned of the Enfield poltergeist situation. And one night when her son Shaka, that was 15 years old, said that he saw a man enter into the room, that was the last straw. She's like, I gotta get my kids out of here. They packed their bags, they moved the next day after just being living in the house for 2 months. So, elaborate hoax or not? Whether you're a paranormal enthusiast or a skeptic, it seems that this story still fascinates people. After all, a new movie, The Conjuring 2, is coming out. It hits theaters June 10th, 2016. Will you be watching it? And that concludes this episode of FTD News in History. Be sure to leave your thoughts and comments down below. What are your beliefs on the supernatural? And if you are new to this channel, be sure to hit that like button to be notified of all these news and history episodes. We discuss the most bizarre, creepy, and shocking stories from the past, as well as we keep you up to date with all the weird stuff that are trending in our world every single week, all here on FTD News. I'm Leroy Kenton, and I'll see you in the next video.